actually perform searching in eCapture, searching is done in the Flex Processor module or the Flex Processor tool, and it is done at the data extract processing time or the processing job time, depending on whether you're going to be tiffing a job or you're going to be extracting the text and getting the path to a native for a native review. So I'm going to go down into my processing job, and I'm going to create a new one. And when I go in, I need to give it a name, and I will put in processing 1. And I'm going down to select my discovery job that I actually want to search. So if I had more than one discovery job for this particular custodian, then I could actually select those and search multiple discovery jobs in one processing job. To get there easily, I'm going to leave the option to show job options after creation selected, so then I can get to my filtering tab. When I click OK, I now have the options for the processing job. And over to the right, you see filtering. In the filtering tab, I have down below Manage Flex Processor Rules. And the way we're going to actually approach this is looking at how we can create the rules if you want to do a manual process or if you want to utilize the Ruleset Manager. So when I open here, I have the Flex Processor Rules. If there are any questions, please send those in the chat, and I will actually answer them before at the end of this actual session. So now, if I'm going to start with the Flex Processor and creating search terms or search rules, I could go in and select a new rule and create each of those line per line in the Flex Processor. What I like to show is an easier way to do that or to accomplish that, and that is actually in the Ruleset Manager. If I go to the Ruleset Manager, I have two options selected here, or possible. I have Import Create Rules, or I can go to a Master Rule Set. But what I'm going to utilize is a search term file, and that means I need to import that to create my rules. So I'm going to click Next. I have three options: import the rules from another job or project, but I'm actually going to bring in a search term file. I have one that the client has signed off on, or the group has signed off on, depending on the environment, and what search terms they want to have processed for this particular job. So, and I'm going to click Next. And the first thing it's going to ask is, where do I have that search term list? So I'm going to go out to where I have that saved, and I have one in search. Now I want to show you two ways to do this. They're both valid, and you will get the results that you need. One is a bit easier to look at when you've actually imported it. So I'm going to open a search term list, and let's go down, open with, and I will open in Notepad. And as you see, here we have our syntax in the actual search term file. This is actually correct, and it will work just as well as the option I'm going to show you in just a minute. So I have my open paren, the word vadism, close paren, space, or space, order. Any syntax, the index that is generated when we discover the job, and that's another key point. If you are going to perform keyword searches in your discovery job, you have to have the index generated, or you will not be able to perform keyword searches. That is a DT search index, and the DT search syntax is what is used when you create your actual search terms. So if you look down here, I have quarter, and then I have a tilde, and the tilde is a stemming value. So in this instance, it's going to look for quarter, quarters, quartered, quarterly, and that's within one word of revenue. Another example would be work stemming. So that's going to look for worker or working. Here we have population within 5 words of Arizona. An asterisk, which you see here with blackout, is an actual wildcard. So that would be anything following that would be included as a hit with blackout asterisk. So for example, blackout 9, blackout 10. I want to show you the file that most users, and myself included, prefer using. So when I go down, I'm going to open this, I'm going to use Notepad. Now here we have our keywords, one word per line or one phrase per line. So if I had a search phrase that I needed to input for a result on the keyword hit, then I would actually use the syntax on that particular line. That isn't, and when it's on the next line is indicating that it's an or, border, or diligence, or recognize. I scroll down to the actual phrases. I have water stemming within one word of revenue, water stemming within one word of income. So that is actually how I can bring in my search term list. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to select that, and I'm going to actually bring it into the Flex processor. I'm going to click Open. Now, what am I going to do with these search terms? Do I want to include them? You see the actions are image. So do I want to include them as a hit? Convert to PDF is the same as image, except we're going straight from native to a PDF single-page format. There are certain areas of the world that that's a requirement, that they can't do native to TIFF to PDF. They have to do native to PDF. So I have convert to PDF. Image or convert to PDF would be including it. If I want to placeholder them, so that's including it, but I'm not actually imaging it, or I could actually remove it. So if I had terms, if there was a match for that term, I wanted to remove the item from the processing job results, then I could remove it. But in this instance, I would have to have an include rule first. Right now, I'm going to image the matches of my keyword list. So I'm going to select image. Now, this screen is just a screen that is actually going to create a template rule to use as an import for the rules we're going to generate. And when I go through this, I usually tell people you can just go ahead and click Next on this. That's the only option you do have unless you cancel. Now, I could also search certain file types or certain file sizes or certain file extensions. In this case, I'm searching the complete discovery job. I'm not trying to isolate out, oh, I just want to search Microsoft Excel or Microsoft email, Outlook email. So I'm going to click Next here. Now, filter by date. If you know that there's a valid date range, then you would need to select the date here. If you don't select the date here, excuse me, and you import this search term file list, then you would have to go to each rule that is generated and then click in and actually set that date. This wizard helps you very much so with actually setting the date range for each particular keyword. So if I want to filter by date, I can select the option, and then I need to pick the start date, and I need to fill in the ending date. When I go to start date, what would be the beginning of the date? I can actually bring up the calendar, or I can click in here and just enter the valid date. So if I want to go back to 2003, and I want to make that July, so I type the 7 on the keyboard, and it brings up the month of July, and I'll start with July 1 of 2003, and maybe I'll take that to December 31st, 2006. Now, we utilize the last modified date for emails, loose files, etc. But if you have emails that don't have a sent date, we need to tell it what date we want to use for that. So the sent date is used for email by default. So we can use the creation date. I can use the last modification date. I also can always include it if it hasn't been sent. So if I have an email that I'm processing that hasn't been sent, I could always include that as a hit, or I could never include it. So those are the options. I will use the last modification date for this particular scenario. And then when I click Next, I have my DC search syntax window. As we have seen, I have my syntax in the actual file. So I don't need to actually tell it to stem. I don't want to stem all words in my list. I don't want to apply that to all search terms I'm importing. Down below, I do have include non-indexed files as matches. So when you're working with the discovery job and you are actually bringing files in, there are files that may not have any text whatsoever and they're not indexed. So do you want to include those automatically as matches or not? I'm going to leave that off. I've already looked at my discovery report, and I'm happy with what my results were. So I'm going to click Next. Now, I could also search certain item IDs. An item ID is the sequential number that's assigned to each item during the discovery phase. An item good is a global unique identifier, and that is assigned per eCapture system. So item ID begins at 1 and will grow per client and start over with 1 with any new client being training. For this particular case, item goods are unique values. If you look at a good value, it will look very similar to an MD5 hash, but it's not necessarily an MD5 hash. We could also search just certain email entry IDs. So now I'm going to click Next. Now we have our scope. The scope is how we're going to treat families. We call them or refer to them as compound documents in the scope verbiage. So here I have apply this rule to all items of a compound doc if the parent matches. That means we're going to be searching the parent only and then include all of the attachments or children if the parent has a keyword match. The second option, scope, is apply this rule to all items of a compound document if at least one item matches. That means it's going to search each member of the family, so a parent and all children. If either one of those family members has a keyword match, then we're going to include the whole family so that I would have an email plus all 3 attachments if the keyword match within the third attachment. The third option, apply this rule to all items of a compound doc if all items match. That would mean that each member of the family would have to contain that keyword for it to be true or for it to bring that particular item in as an affected item. The last one, treat individual items of compound docs separately, means whenever I have a keyword match, it will only bring in the files that have the keyword match, in essence, breaking the family. So the one that makes most sense in keyword searching is usually the second one, and that is apply this rule to all items of a compound doc if at least one item matches. Now, while we're on this screen, we could also set a flag where, as it identifies these matches, we could set a unique flag to be set during the process. And this would actually show in the QC module. So when I go to new flag here, I can type in whatever I like. I mean, for example, I'm just going to say that these are all confidential terms. So I'm going to put in the word confidential. And now that is going to be set when I actually select the word confidential. So what we're doing here, we're including all members of the family if at least one member is a match of the keywords that I have in my keyword list. And I'm also going to set a flag of confidential. Now you can actually export this out as well when you are ready to export. You can actually open a QC session and bring in the documents that have been flagged as confidential. So now I'm going to click Next on this. Now it's giving me a recap of the options that I've selected. So I'm imaging and setting a QC flag of confidential. I'm applying the rule to all items of a family if at least one item matches. And then I have my criteria of date July 1st, 2003 to 12/31 of 2006. Now I'm going to click Finish. And this is if you want to utilize a category. I could also, I've set back here that I had a confidential flag that I wanted to utilize. I could also, in essence, set a category. And a category could be the word confidential. So if I want to go down and use a specific category for all search terms, I could select the last option and then type in the word category. We have the option of this import file has a category entry for each search term. So if the search term file is generated with the category being after the search term phrase and delimited by a semicolon or a pipe, some special character that's not included in the search, then it would use that as the category. use the search term as category. So and I wouldn't want to do that because I have probably 60 or 70 search terms in this particular search term list, and I would defeat the purpose of using a category. A category is to bring documents together so that you can quickly do a search on the contents of category to find something. I'm not going to use a category in this case, and I'm going to click Next. Now it's giving me a list of my keywords. I could do a quick QC of those, a last-minute spot check to see that everything looks the way I want, and then I can click Next. If I had a category in this keyword search term, I would select the delimiter, and then it would list out two columns, one for the search term and then one for the category. Now, remember on that second screen it said, or third screen, to generate, create a blank template rule. Well, now we really don't need that, so we're going to actually get rid of it. So we're going to delete the template rule. And now I'm ready to click Finish and bring my keywords in. This is how they display. So here I have image and set QC flags, and you see it generated a rule per keyword phrase on each of those lines. If I scroll down, you can see here are the search terms that I actually brought in. So there's my California within 3 of commission, and you see how I broke it for us. So in bracket, California within 3 of commission in bracket. Then we have our date range is over here. Date 7/1 of 2003 to 12/31 of 2006. Okay. Now, if I would go and preview my results, it's going to go through and search that discovery and tell me how many items have been affected. So I will go ahead and do that now. For you to be able to preview results, the discovery job has to be complete. So I click Preview Results. Also, when we preview results, it is going to set the filter state to have the rule to be applied or the filter to be applied. So that's another thing that happens when you preview. One thing that does not happen, and you will never see when you select Preview Results, is if I go down and I select to process job duplicates here, they will not show up in my preview. They only will be listed in a report when you actually start the processing or data extract job. Now, when I look at this, you can see it's showing me that I have 37 records in my discovery job that have a match, and we have an effective rule and a rule sort. This is a little more advanced on the Flex processor than just entry-level Flex processor, but the Flex processor is based on an effective rule being applied to a particular file. So that means the action of that particular rule will take place if that rule is the effective rule, meaning the last rule in the rule set that can be applied. So you see I have here, if I would bring this out, it would tell me the net date range and what I actually searched for. So, and the search phrase is right there. I'll make that a little bigger. So you see the first affected file was David and then work stemming, and then market and mark and work stemming. So those are the files that have been affected. Now, if I have a list of keywords and rule number, let's say rule number 10 and rule number 15 and rule number 17 are all true, so that word is in all 3 files, the last rule to affect the file becomes the effective rule. So a preview is not a keyword hit report or anything like that. We do have a keyword hit report that you can run, and it would go through and show the total number of occurrences of a word, and then you can also get the number of files that would be if only that word existed in that particular file. Now, in this instance, everything is going to be imaged. Today, it's very common in the industry for our clients or the team not to want to review or look at TIFF Excel spreadsheets, only TIFF during production or even doing a production of a native Excel spreadsheet. I can't just go here. If I'm going to actually do that, I can't just click New Rule and create a new rule and say that I want a placeholder Excel spreadsheet. If I do click New Rule and put that in, that's going to look at every item in the discovery that is an Excel spreadsheet. The only time I really want that to happen is if the Excel spreadsheet is actually containing a keyword that was part of my keyword search list. So to accomplish that, there's a little drop down here that if people haven't been shown, they may not see at times. When you click it, it's called the New Search and Results Rule. And when I go to that and I select it, I have the option to apply to results of all previous rules or apply to the results of selected Rule 2, which means the rule I have highlighted. This would not accomplish it. I wouldn't want to go through and have to put it on every single line that I wanted as a sub-rule to create a placeholder for Excel versus TIFFing. So what makes sense in this situation is to apply to results of all previous rules. And you notice that the arrow points up. So to accomplish that, I need to put in a rule title. I have two ways of putting what I want the placeholder to say in. And one is by the rule title, or by selecting that I want the placeholder with document text, and then do a custom placeholder. Now, when we're doing Excel, I do want a placeholder with document text because I want to extract that text so that it is searchable when these are being reviewed. If I placeholder it, we're not going to extract the text. We're just going to placeholder that file, and then with the message that I indicate. So that's going to be placeholder with document text. And as soon as I select it, you see that I can select metadata field to build a custom placeholder. In this case, we're just going to put in the rule title, which will be sufficient. And I'm going to be very clear with this placeholder, Excel placeholder, or Excel, I'll do it this way, Excel. All right, Excel files placeholder, or Excel files produced natively, whatever verbiage you want to put in. And if you're not very good at spelling, copy this and open Microsoft Word or Outlook or something and paste it in, see if there's any misspellings. When you do this, and let's say I have 10,000 Excel spreadsheets in here, if I have something spelled incorrectly, then you're going to have to do some reprocessing to correct it. So, Excel, file, placeholder with document text. Now, what will my scope be on this? Remember, we selected above, apply this rule to all items if at least one item matches. We don't want to do that again because that would placeholder every member of the family just because an Excel spreadsheet was attached or it was embedded. So the scope that makes sense in this case is to treat individual items of compound documents separately. So I'm going to select that option. And then I need to make sure I select Microsoft Excel. So I can go down and select the top level of Microsoft Excel, and it will select all options, all versions of Excel that are listed in our filter types or file types. Now, if there was a instruction that said placeholder all spreadsheets, there is a category for spreadsheets. I mean, Excel is not the only spreadsheet out there. When I do hear clients talking, they do see, Lotus 123 and they say Quattro Pro and things like that. I could also select that I want the placeholder all Excel spreadsheets and spreadsheets that are not Excel. So I would just select that category here, and then they would all be placeholders. And the text would be extracted. So going on, I look here. If you look, our action and setting a QC flag is on this side. The action being performed, or the search being performed, is on this side. So search for John in the date range of July 1st to December 31st. We haven't set the QC flag. So if I'm really going to utilize this confidential, I need to make sure that's carried forward because it's not on this particular process. So I need to make sure I check confidential. And now you see that we have placeholder with document text selected, and then the rule is all set with also setting confidential. Now that there is a pretty valid rule set. So I can go back to preview results, and then we can actually see, and I don't know in my data set, I believe it does have keywords that are matches of Excel spreadsheets. So when I look here, Before, everything was set to image. Well, here I have a placeholder with document text. If I scan that column, then you see that that is an Excel spreadsheet. So that is a good example of that effective rule. When I did my preview before I added the placeholder with document text, everything that was included, all the 37 records, were image action, or the action of image. Now that I've added the placeholder, it has now updated the effective rule to be rule number 105. So the effective rule is 105, and instead of the one that was previous. So the order of your rules makes a big difference. In most cases, when I'm creating a filter set or in the Flex Processor rules, I need to make sure that I go through and I make sure that I have my rules in the correct order, and if I'm going to image, that is almost always first. Placeholder would come next. I could have multiple placeholder items, and then the last would be remove. So if I needed to remove certain file types, then I would do that last. In this case, I'm only bringing in files that I get a keyword hit on, which means I could actually search the text. So we should be fine with that. So I have that set. If I select a new rule here, let's say that I did want to remove duplicates. So if any of these files were duplicates, then I would actually have to do a new rule. It does not allow you to do a search and results rule for removing duplicates. If I click new rule, I would type in remove duplicates. Then my action is going to be removed. I've also found that a lot of people, a lot of companies are not necessarily removing them from the process job. They're actually placeholdering them and creating an export set so that they will remove them from their export, that they leave them in with a flag of duplicate so that they can get rid of them easily. And then the placeholder is created. But I'm actually removing them. And I need to select that I want to actually process job dupes. So when I go down here and actually select it, the verbiage for your scope changes. Before we had 4 options, and now we have 2. When I go in, I have maintain compound document structure, and then I have treat documents individually. And if I'm going to actually remove duplicates, then do I want to break families apart? That is not normally the case. And I honestly can't say that I've ever seen that. So I maintain compound document structure, and process job dupes, what level do I want to do that? This correlates to your hierarchy at the left here. So I can do current job, so it would only look within the job to see if the file existed more than once. I could do within custodian. That means it would only include it one time. If it is included in other jobs that have been ran, then it would remove it. If I go to project, it would look at all custodians that are generated for the actual project. And if it had been ran before or included, then it would actually remove it. And then I can go to client, which is very rare to utilize. We do have a few clients that do. That means every case or project I have set for this particular client, it would look to see if it was included in any of those projects. So I'll just select custodian. And we have an option here of advanced. So if I select advanced, that's going to actually take 2 files that have the same MD5 hash value and examine them bit by bit to determine if they're an actual duplicate or not. If there's a lot of duplicates, that will add time to the process. And then I have file name match. So this means the file names have to be the same for it to be considered a duplicate. So if I select it, then if you had a report that you showed an attorney and it was charlie.doc is a duplicate of ipro.doc, they would be like, well, how can that be? The names aren't the same. So there are people that have that philosophy that the file isn't the same unless the names are. So you can check that, and it would include it. Now, one other thing down here, this was added, and it's kind of in an area that some people don't know or don't even notice that it's there, and that's allow child originals. When you're running data, it's very common to have PST files where you have emails, emails have attachments, and then you run loose files that are in folders. That loose file may exist as an attachment in an email, or the attachment may exist as a loose file. If you turn that on, then it will look at any loose file to see, okay, have you been processed before? Then I don't want you processed now. So that would be allow child original. And that is searching in the eCapture module in the Flex Processor Rules Manager. And I'm going to bring up the chat to see if anybody has any questions I can find where the chat is on this version. It doesn't look like anyone has any questions. Again, let's bring up that PowerPoint again. I'm going to go back to my share and go to the PowerPoint. There we go. Okay, so I have no questions so far. Oh, well, I told the original of the attachment. That is correct. Okay, the question is, if you ran a job and you are looking, if you have an email and the attachment is there and that has been processed and you turn on duplicates and you want to allow child original, that would be only looking at loose files that are ran after that. So if you ran the loose files first and then you process those and then you run the PSTs next, then it's already been included, so it wouldn't be removed. So you are right. So if you have any questions or need anything, the email address to contact is sales@iprotect.com, and it's sales@iprotech.com. The phone number is 602-324-4776. And if you've called support, probably dial that number or the 877 number. And I do recognize people in here and that attended today. And again, if you need anything, my name is Charlie, and my information is, I went through that slide pretty quick, is CCLARY@iprotech.com. And everybody have a great day.